This woman actually climbed a rope at an altitude of 50 degrees below zero and 10,000 meters high. She wasn't just fooling around, she was doing it to survive. She endured the frostbite on her hands, climbing up the shaky rope without any protection, slowly inching her way up. In such low temperature and lack of oxygen at 10,000 meters high, any slight mistake could send her plummeting to the earth, becoming a meat patty. At this time, the hot air balloon was still ascending. If she didn't open the valve to release the hot air soon, the balloon would fly directly into the sky, and she would die right then and there. She didn't know how long she climbed. Finally, the woman reached the edge of the hot air balloon. But by then, the balloon had frozen into a snowball. She wanted to grab the safety rope nearby, but it was too far away. So she was left hanging at an altitude of 10,000 meters. She looked at her companion in the basket, and suddenly her mind cleared. She couldn't give up now, so she slowly stood up, grabbed the safety rope nearby, tied it around her waist, and hooked the rope with her wrists, climbing up bit by bit. Finally, she successfully climbed to the top of the hot air balloon. She used her elbow to hit the hot air valve, but the valve was frozen solid. She couldn't knock it open at all, so she slowly stood up and stomped on it with force. Finally, she kicked open the valve of the hot air balloon. Hot air gushed out, almost blowing her away. The woman quickly wedged her shoe against the valve, took out a small knife, and cut the shoelace. After completing all of this, she couldn't hold on any longer and fell heavily to the ground. But this was 20,000 meters high in the sky, with the hot air balloon swaying slightly. The woman's body started to slowly slide down. The woman passed out at an altitude of 10,000 meters, and the next moment, she slid down slowly. She didn't know how long had passed. The woman woke up from her faint. The sight in front of her almost made her think she had seen Buddha. She tightly grasped the rope, with 10,000 meters of empty space below her feet. She shouted loudly to her companion in the basket, but her companion was still unconscious. Helpless, she could only twist her body and slowly approach the basket. After multiple attempts, she finally got closer to the basket. Using inertia, she successfully grabbed the rope and exerted all her strength to climb into the basket. The woman collapsed on the ground. Quickly she got up to check, calling out her companion's name. But the man's eyes remained tightly shut. No response at all. Suddenly, the man opened his eyes drowsily. The woman burst into tears of joy. They looked at the hot air balloon slowly descending, anticipating the moment they would return to the ground. However, another accident happened. The snowflakes in front of them started falling slower and slower, until they were directly suspended in the air. The woman panicked immediately. She looked out the window and saw the snowflakes flying towards the sky. She finally understood the descent speed of the hot air balloon was too fast, exceeding the speed at which the snowflakes fell. At the speed, they would definitely be smashed into tomato sauce. The woman and her companion quickly pulled the rope, shaking off the shoes stuck on it, and closed the exhaust valve, but the descent speed of the balloon was still too fast. They didn't have time to consider if throwing objects from high altitude was illegal and quickly started throwing things down. In the end, they even threw down the box. Soon, they threw everything they could throw from the basket. Even their coats had to be thrown away. However, even so, they were still falling at a deadly speed. Soon, they saw the ground. In the chaos, the man suddenly thought of something. Seeing the hot air balloon flying towards the earth at the speed of light, the man suddenly came up with a solution. They climbed onto the suspension ring, ready to cut the ropes on the basket. Soon, the man cut two ropes. Just as he was about to cut the third rope, the suspension ring tilted, almost throwing the two of them out. Finally, the man cut the last rope, and the entire basket fell down, but the hot air balloon was still too fast. At this moment, the woman stood up. She wanted to throw herself down so that the man could survive with the meteorological data. The man broke down, shouting at the woman, not wishing to share the same birthday, but wishing to share the same day of death. Upon hearing this, the woman instantly changed her mind about dying. Suddenly, the man came up with another solution. She cut the last unnecessary rope, turning the balloon into a parachute. Only then did the balloon slowly descend and gently crash into the trees below. And fortunately, the man fell onto a tree while the woman was dragged by the balloon and slid for 200 meters before stopping. Until dusk, the woman finally woke up from her faint. Her whole body was in extreme pain. She shouted the man's name loudly. Soon enough, the man responded from a nearby thicket. Having survived a disaster, at this moment, their feelings couldn't be expressed in words. Supporting each other, they walked towards home with a limp. This story tells us a truth. Don't climb too high if there's no need. Staying on the ground is the safest.